All right, real happy to be joined by my next guest on the Sports Card Shop guest line. He is the owner and founder of Onyx Authenticated, Mr. Lance Fischer. Welcome.
Thank you, John. Appreciate you having me on.
Well, I'm glad you could make it. We had a little scheduling. I've been under the weather. We had to kind of reschedule by a day. So thank you for being accommodating there. I know I thanked you off the air, if you will. I'll do an official on the air one as well. It's the standard like first time on the podcast question, but sort of your hobby background. When did it kind of all start for you and all that good stuff?
Yeah, no, some people may figure out my age as I kind of talk about that, but it started when I was probably about 10. So in 1983, 84, a buddy of mine got me into collecting trading cards. And believe it or not, we would kind of buy and sell at garage sales at the time. There was no eBay. And I just started to have a passion for it. And what's interesting about the hobby, this probably goes for a lot of us, is when you hit like those teenage years, you're like, oh, cards, they're silly, those are for kids, whatever, and you stop collecting. But it always draws you back in. And I can't tell you how many times that I thought, okay, my trading card thing is done. It's always pulled me back in, and just been a collector ever since. And that goes for trading cards, autographs, getting those baseball signed, footballs. And I think it really started taking off when I started recruiting for Florida State for the football team, and just understanding kind of a whole nother aspect of sports itself, and then prospecting and recruiting and all that. And it got to the point where wanted to do this. So I won't go into how we started the company, but that's my collecting background.
Yeah, and we're similar age. I was born in 72. It is what it is, right? Like my dad says, there's only one way to stop getting older. I'm not a fan of that. So we're similar in age, and I did not know that background with being recruiting for Florida State. But again, that'll segue Lance right into kind of my next question is kind of the birth of Onyx. Kind of talk, I've been in the hobby 40 years. I know you guys aren't new. You've been around since the early 2000s. Some other people may not be as knowledgeable about that. So, kind of where the idea came from and when you decided to launch it, kind of how it all started, so to speak.
Yeah, no, it's a very interesting story. As a collector, because that's what has to come first. You have to have a passion for doing this as a business. That's for sure, because of the ups and downs. But was collecting autographs, and a buddy of mine were traveling up to a minor league game, and we were in the car, and I said, wouldn't mind doing this as a business. And he goes like, what, opening a hobby shop? Like, what are you thinking? I said, no. I said, being a manufacturer. He says, you're out of your mind. He's like, I don't know how you're going to be able to pull that off, because who do you know? Who's going to know your brand and all that other good stuff. And I thought about it, and I thought about, okay, well, if we did this and if we did that and if we did some unique things, I think we could kind of get our feet wet and be able to pull this off. So he was there more for moral support. And, I kind of financed everything, and we started off in memorabilia. And the thing that we were going to do was launch our kind of mystery memorabilia product. And man, I'll tell you what, John, the hardest thing was getting agents to even give you the time of day. It was tough. And it's funny because, and this will maybe make some people laugh, but the guy the player who really kind of, got the spark going was Matt Laporta. And if you remember Matt Laporta, when he was like, man, he was the guy. He was hitting home runs left and right when he was in the minor leagues. Everyone thought he was going to be the next coming of, Mickey Mantle. And that's actually the game that we were driving up to. And, I said, you know what, we'll talk to Matt, and man, we'll get him to buy into this, and we'll get him to, kind of start the autograph process and all that. And luckily we were able to talk to him after the game. He signed a ball to me, to Lance. I still have that ball, and said to reach out to my agent, Boris. I was like, okay, cool, no problem. And man, it went nowhere. They didn't return our call, didn't return an email, nothing. So it was a grind. And finally, in Jupiter, Florida, a player named Logan Morrison and Mike Stanton, who is Giancarlo Stanton, were one of our first kind of clients. They signed autographed memorabilia. And we were like, okay, cool. We can get this going. We were able to get in touch with his agent, especially with Logan's, because it was a big deal. He wasn't getting any deals, so his agent was all for it. And believe it or not, our second player that we ever did an autograph signing with, and his first, was Freddie Freeman. And we actually had an option of either getting Jason Hayward or Freddie Freeman. And this kind of put my recruiting cap on. But I really liked Freddie Freeman. I liked what he was showing in the game. I saw the potential, and I thought it was better to go after him than Hayward, and we did. And I think everyone can figure out kind of what kind of decision that was. And so we started getting all these autographs. We put the product together, and no one wanted to buy it. No one was like, never heard of you guys. Don't know what that is. It's cool. We had them in these nice little cigar boxes and a nice little cube. So the display was already there. And no one really wanted to give us a chance. So some of the feedback we got was like, hey, you need to get a deeper checklist. I think we only had like 12 guys. And so that's what we did. And that was a grind. And I want to say by the second or third year, we were able to lock in exclusives with Julio Teheran and Randall Delgado and Roydus Vizcaino, and all Atlanta Braves and good high-end prospects. I think Teheran at the time was top 5 in Baseball America's publication. And so we took them. In fact, it was Brian Gray had a show up in Atlanta, and reached out to him and asked if we could bring the guys in. And they said, yeah, that's fine. And so we brought them in, and it was interesting. It got a lot of interest. A lot of public wanted to get their guys, their autographs. And we had made enough money where it was like, hey, you know what? The Vegas Summit's coming up, and there's an opportunity to really showcase Onyx in front of all the dealers and stores and distributors and everything like that. So we finally had a deep enough checklist, and I think a product that was going to interest people, and everyone had to listen to our pitch. It was like this round robin, almost like speed dating of all these store shop owners and distributors and everyone that was part of the hobby that had to listen to our pitch. At that time, the Summit had this thing called Meet the Industry, I think it was. And that gave us a chance to actually talk to everyone about who we were, why we were different, and what we could do. And man, John, after we got done with the presentations, I think we ended up doing 10 that day, and I couldn't even talk. Everyone wanted to buy into what this product was, and it sold out. And it really kind of helped our launching point into getting into the industry, becoming a manufacturer per se. And I want to say another year or two later, when my graphics guy is like, you know what, you should do trading cards. I thought he was crazy. Not going to happen ever. It's too ultra competitive. And he kept pushing and pushing. So I think the next industry summit, we brought a little sample of some of the cards that we were going to do, and people liked them. So I was like, all right, let's give this a shot. And it was, and I know I'm making this a little bit of a long story, but it was Trading cards was a grind. I don't recommend it. Oh, not listen, I'll take competition every day, all day. The reason why I won't recommend it is a very, very frustrating thing. It's getting the logistics to players, making sure there's no logos, making sure you got image rights, making sure all these things are lined up in order to put a product that no one's ever heard of. And so, we kept pushing and pushing and pushing. We would sell, we'd break about even. And there was times I was like, you know what? I can't do this anymore. I can't do these trading cards. They're gonna drive me crazy. And the passion for the hobby kept me going. It kept me doing it. And finally in 2019, we brought on the vintage line and we hit a sweet spot. People love the look, they like the feel. On card autographs is kind of, well, it is very important. And we were hitting a lot of marks that people were looking for at the time. And then, of course, COVID came, and that just kind of launched Onyx into the stratosphere and branched into football, basketball, done some soccer now. So, long story short, that's kind of a little bit of the history of Onyx right now.
Yeah, that's I love it. No offense to, no disrespect to Jason Hayward. I think good call on the Freddie Freeman versus Hayward. But yeah, it's like you said. You might make it look easy, or it might look easy from the outside looking in. But like you said, it's a grind. Even the trading cards initially, you got all the things that have to line up, and you're kind of competing with the big boys. But one of the things that with the major manufacturers that's kind of hurt them, if you ask collectors, and as both of us are collectors, there was a period there for a while where they got, I don't want to say lazy, but sort of rested on their laurels. Some of the complaints were the design was not innovative, or they were just rehashing old stuff and trying to, make it new again. And, it lacked some thought, or like I said, innovation. And one of the things with you guys, you kind of changed, you brought your take on it. And I think people found it refreshing. You touched on another huge thing, right? People have done whole podcasts on, on card versus sticker autos. And,
Right.
you ask 10 collectors, which one would you rather have? You're going to get 10 people say, I'd rather have an on card auto. Now, I'll say I will answer that the same way. Sticker autos don't bother me as much as someone else, but if given the choice of the two, Lance, it's a no brainer. Give me an
Right.
on card. But if you know if meaning like you don't have a sticker auto, you can't get somebody. That's, I guess, what I'm trying to say. I'd
Right.
rather still have someone be available in a product. I'll go right into that. How difficult is, we know a lot with redemptions, with some of the companies do redemptions, and then they do the sticker autos because it's just easier to peel them and put them on top of a card. Talk about the difficulties of being on card. I have Onyx on card autos. They're
Mm.
beautiful, and again, they're on card autos. They're not sticker autos, but again, we appreciate pulling them out of a pack or acquiring them. But talk about it as a manufacturer, the difficulties in acquiring them and getting those things signed.
Yeah, it's definitely a logistical challenge, right? Because if they lose the cards, you can't just send a bunch of sheet of stickers again, which has its benefits and its shortcomings. But the on card piece, we won't deviate. We've had a lot of people say, hey, maybe you kind of start to slowly migrate stickers in. I'm like, nah, this is what we're known for, is on card, and as difficult and challenging as it can be, we roll with it. And the good thing on that, John, is that we've got now every agency out there knows that we're only on card. At first they were like, oh, when are you sending the stickers? We're not sending stickers, we're sending cards. Oh, okay. Oh, that's right. I remember. So we've kind of set a precedent with us where the agencies know when it comes to Onyx, listen, they're going to send you cards. You're not getting stickers. And what's interesting too on that is that the players actually enjoy signing the cards a lot more than the stickers. They actually like knowing what they're signing. Then okay, I wonder what this is going to go on. And it's huge. I mean, it gives you more room. Like when we do our inscriptions, unless you're going to have a big sticker like this, takes up half the card. Um, it's hard to do any type of innovative or cool things on a sticker. It's just there's not enough room, and a big sticker is going to look kind of corny. So there's some big benefits there, and we're not going to deviate from it. As challenging as it can be, I want to say our biggest challenge now is just when the guys lose the cards and whether or not we have enough time to reprint them again. And if I don't, where did the cards go? That's probably the biggest challenge. But before that, yeah, it was just like, well, the stickers are easy. You can send them, instantly. So their thing is like, okay, when they agree to the deal, hey, send the stickers, tomorrow. Well, no, now we have to go get the cards made. So, we've gotten to the point where the agents know, like, hey, once we agree to the deal, you got to give us a few weeks or maybe even longer, depending on the time of year, on when we're going to make the cards. So we've set a precedent. And I know some people have said, well, stickers have got these big benefits compared to on card. That's fine. Everyone's got their opinion. But it can be done. No one can say, oh, to have all on card autographs, unless unfortunately the person's deceased, is impossible. That's not true. We've done it, and we've done it year over year over year, and we've done it in different sports. So it's not true. Yes, it's hard, but it can be done. So it's cool. It's cool to be a manufacturer that basically we can say that, hey, we've always done on card. And that's the path we're going to continue to take because that's the precedent we set.
I appreciate hearing you say that, Lance. That hey, we're going to stay on that track. There's a difference in quality between the two, and we're not going to kind of veer off and lower the quality. Like you said, it is trickier, but you still get it done, and probably unless I don't know something. The only company I know that can put wear that belt, so to speak, of all on card autos, especially in the quantities. I don't know if there's a small company that's got 2 athletes or whatnot, but of your stature that's doing on card autos, and there's something to be said about that. You should be proud and to further it more and say, hey, we're still going to do it. Like we've done it long enough. We could probably do sticker autos and no one would complain maybe too much.
Right.
But it's a different in quality. We're not going to do it. You mentioned like a player maybe or an athlete potentially losing the cards. I get you don't have to mention names or anything like that. Does that happen often? Like, is it something that comes up sometimes, not often? Like, talk about the kind of logistics there.
Yeah, it doesn't happen often. Unfortunately, it happens, but it doesn't happen often. One of the other things that we try to do is we try to do these things in person too. Granted, it's not always easy. Baseball is probably the best sport to be able to pull that off. One, especially during spring training, because either everyone's in Florida or they're in Arizona. Especially Arizona makes it logistically very easy. So what we're doing now, John, especially because we're talking about the on card, is the hard thing is getting dual signatures on one card. It's easier to just say, hey, you know what? Let's put 3 guys on here, and we'll just put 3 sticker autographs on there. What we're doing this spring with the spring vintage product is we're going to be adding a bunch of dual autograph cards. And the reason for that is we're seeing a lot of these guys in person. In fact, we're having an event in a few weeks, and we're going to have the ability to do that. And they're all going to be on card. There's going to be some cool inscriptions. We've done Man, I want to say one of the coolest subscriptions we've ever done was with CJ Stroud and Jackson Smith-Njigba, where they put, when they were in the Rose Bowl, and I think it was against Utah, they both put up like video game numbers. And so they signed the dual card each, and then Jackson put his stats from that game on the one on his side, and CJ Stroud put his stats on the other side. And we called the card Bed of Roses. And I there's someone out there that I know has the card now. They didn't pull it, but it is one of the cooler cards you'll see out there, and it's a 101. But and I've got CJ holding the card after they finished signing that. It was pretty cool, but it's stuff like that that you can do. And in the hobby, I think you got to do stuff like that. Topps did a phenomenal job with Victor Wembanyama, and putting, he signed his first card. That's the stuff that the hobby wants and needs. And I think we've got to continue to push those limits.
Yeah, that's cool, and even getting them in person, right? That way, that they were signed. You can't get any
Right.
better authentication than that. And like you said, taking a picture with that card where they wrote their stats. I mean, just cool. Both had great years. C.J. Stroud had arguably the greatest rookie season by a quarterback in NFL history. If it's not the best, it's in the conversation, and he definitely looks like the real deal. So some might say, oh, Lance, yeah, you have on card autos, but they're B quality players. I think that just goes to show you, throw that argument out the
Right.
window. It's not gonna hold water. The NIL has obviously been a huge thing in the last couple of years, with it being officially ratified, where college players can literally get paid, by whether it be alumnus or the college themselves or local businesses. You were kind of doing that in your way, before that. Has that, with the landscape changing on the NIL front, has that made what you do easier, or has it upped the degree of difficulty?
No, believe it or not, it's made it a lot easier. We've got a relationship with a lot of the schools collectives now, and what makes it very interesting, and I've had a lot of conversations with the different agencies, especially over the winter meetings, on the impact that the collectives have compared to the agencies, because the collectives now are signing the players, whereas I want to say not maybe a year ago, maybe just over a year ago, before all these collectives started to form, it was representation from an agency that when the kid graduated and was ready to go into the professional piece, they were going to stick with that agency. Well, now the collectives are kind of stealing all these guys, signing agreements that they'll, stay with the school, or they'll do all these autographs, things like that. And it's made it a very interesting aspect from where NIL on the player side started to where it is today with the collectives, and how impactful they have. I mean, when NIL first started, the players were getting paid, but I don't think anyone expected what we see today, where now you've got quarterbacks that had a great year in college are commanding, a 7-figure deal in order to transfer, to get into the portal. That's the big deal. So, it's helped us out a lot. Where in baseball, I'll give that as an example. We had to look at the like the international pool that would have the I think it's January 2nd signing, or January 7th, whatever. It used to be July 2nd. Getting those guys early was kind of, cool thing to do. But now with NIL, we can get college kids that we couldn't even touch before. So some of the guys who played at LSU, in football, man, I can't tell. We got relationships with the University of Michigan and Alabama and Georgia, and I mean, you name it. The big schools, because they know what we do and what we've been doing for a while. And so we love it. I love NIL recruiting for Florida State football. It's been a long time coming, and the fact that the kids now can make some money, I think there needs to be some restraints on it. I do agree that there needs to be that, but the fact that kids are now making money and not basically living off McDonald's, and making the schools all this money, it's about time. It's about time it happened. They just need to kind of wrangle it in a little bit. I think the portal's out of control. They shouldn't have where a kid could jump in the portal every single year. It's like, listen, you can jump in the portal once, and that's it. So if you don't like your school, that's fine. Go ahead and jump in the portal. But after that, you're stuck. So I think there needs to be some accountability there. But anyways, long story short, again, we love it. We love NIL.
I agree with you, by the way, on the portal. I think it's too much like the Wild Wild West, where something don't go the kids' way, they don't play enough, or they don't get something. I think it's
Mm,
too easy for them to say, "I'm out of here." I think there
yeah.
should be some. I like a lot of that came from like coaches just leaving on a dime and leaving the kids sort of hanging. So I get what the portal kind of originally came from, and its usefulness. But like you said, Lance, I think there's got to be some parameters, some rules. Whether it be like you said, which I agree. I think that's what I would say is you can do it one time. Whenever you decide to do it, that's up to you. But you get one crack you get one ride, one spin on it. So make sure
Right.
that that's when you want to do it. Um, but I get a follow up question to the difficulties now that these young folks and athletes are have more opportunities to make money. Has it cost Onyx more to sign these deals with these players? Are they a little more? I don't know if savvy is the right word, but are they a little more woke about like, hey, I can, or has it been competitive? Like, hey, I can get this from over here. Can you match that or beat that? Has that
Right.
stuff kind of come into play or not necessarily?
No, I wouldn't say it's come into play like that. I think everyone understands the parameters of what's been set when it comes to these guys. Now, hey, listen, they all test it. They'll come to us and want us to pay X amount of money, and I'm like, oh no way, we're not doing that. See where this is going, and if Johnny Football makes, let's just throw a number out there, $100 for an autograph, that means the next Johnny Football 2 is going to want $125. And that's not a precedent we want to set. We want to keep things even kill. Yes, we get certain aspects, that are going to drive prices up a little bit, but there's been attempts to really drive it high, but it's being able to have the restraints on there and knowing there's a lot of other players out there. Just because you're throwing one guy that could be a Heisman candidate, guess what? There's about 5 or 6 other ones that are also in the same boat that you can go and get a reasonable deal with. And, on that note, this is where it's important, where the manufacturers, yes, we don't communicate like that, but there's an understanding that if, an agent or a collective or someone comes and says, hey, we want this for a player, we kind of know in our heads, like, you know what, it doesn't make sense. And we don't want to artificially escalate the price that these guys are going to get, because listen, in the end, it's going to affect the consumer. Then we have to increase the price of our product. And, and that doesn't mean just because Johnny Football wants this, that the value of his card is going to be that. And so we've got to kind of, keep all that in mind and understand it. And I think, the manufacturers kind of get it. We all know where that range should be based on quantities and guarantees and exclusives and all that good stuff. So there's been some challenges in the past. I won't get into it, but there's been challenges with other companies kind of rocking the boat with another company because they didn't want to pay that much. And now they're stuck paying it because you basically built the bottom. And you don't want to kind of piss off the big dogs, not knowing or understanding what you're doing. So you got to be real careful with that. So again, no, it's we've been able to maintain control, but there's times it gets tested.
Yeah, and I get it. Everyone wants to get their most bang for the buck. I guess it's easy to start high and then kind of come down and be
Right.
realistic about it. We mentioned Tops Fanatics earlier. Uh, they're obviously now going to be the big player in the industry. They kind of always were, but even more so now with Fanatics acquiring them and the licensings of three of the major sports. You're as a collector, as someone who got to start in the hobby, kind of thoughts on two fronts. Just your general thoughts, and how does that affect what you do with Onyx?
Yeah, no, it's interesting. It's got its pros and its cons. I think Tops is doing some really good things. I absolutely love what they did with the debut patch. I think that's genius. The fact that they were able to get the players to wear those patches on the jerseys, on their debut jerseys, and then be able to take that patch and put it in a card is incredible. I mean, it's such a unique piece. So things like that I think are fantastic. What they're doing on the marketing end, the Tom Brady commercial that everyone saw with the Montreal Expos, that was incredible. That's the stuff that's really going to get new collectors into the hobby and get people to stay engaged. We just can't saturate it with a zillion different products, or too much of one thing. I mean, we don't want to get back into the late 80s, early 90s again. It's the worst thing we could do. The downside is they are a corporation, and they're a very large corporation. They've got to make money, and they've got shareholders, and they've got other stuff that they got to appease. And unfortunately, that can negatively impact the hobby where the shareholders want more. It's like, hey, listen, I made this investment, I want more, I need a bigger return, I expect more growth, whatever it is. And so you've got to be able to balance that. So hopefully they're able to do that. It's I won't say it's a bad thing right now. But if it's not balanced correctly and the right people aren't making the best decisions, for the hobby, because it is the one thing we can't forget, it is a hobby. That's how it started. Everyone's got to remember, this is a hobby. Yes, you can make money from it, and you do very well, but always remember it's still a hobby. And that's the important part there. And if Topps keeps that in mind, especially with the innovation that they're doing, I'm all for it. There's the hobby's big enough where there's room for a bunch of us. It doesn't have to be just one. Like us, we've got our niche, the on card, and even though it's not got the logos on there, people still enjoy it. And don't the big dogs should never try to ruin that. Don't ruin the little dogs just because you want everything. You're gonna piss too many people off. You're gonna set the wrong precedent. And we gotta work together. Again, it's a hobby, so we can't forget that.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Well said. My fear, someone's been in like you said, lived in the 80s and 90s to what's been referred to as the junk wax era. Two things. You obviously don't really want to see a return to that as far as when it comes to production and printing presses that are probably still rolling to this day. I kid. But the other thing too, I'm old school to the point where like I think the more companies that are doing something, the better competition and the more it pushes each company to put out the best product because you're competing
Right.
against three or four when it was Tops and Upper Deck and Fleer and Score and Donruss and others. I always felt like that they each had to like try to outdo one another, or hey, this is why we're the best. And you got
Mhm.
some of that innovation at times. I guess my fear is with Topps having everything but hockey, Lance, is that they might rest on their laurels and kind of feel like, hey, you have to buy this product because
Right.
it's the only licensed basketball, football, and baseball product. So, it's almost like they force feed. That's force feed it to you. That's sort of my fear with where we're going. Like you said, right now I'm cautiously optimistic, kind of like you said, but I fear like because there's not a lot of there is no other company producing licensed product
Right.
when this licensing fully goes into their corner that they may not be on the innovative front, or they may just say, "Hey, you got to buy the product because there is no other licensed product." I hope they don't do that. There's a lot, like you said, there's a lot of smart people in that room that are making certain calls. You hope that the smartness prevails rather than just someone in a money room counting, counting money. I mean, how do I guess we're not fortune tellers, obviously, but I mean, how do you think this get? What do you think winds up happening? Where if you had to like predict, you know,
Where do I think this goes? But I think the biggest thing that scares me is we get back in the junk wax era again. Um,
yeah,
I read about how much Series One was produced for this year, and it's mind-boggling. It's absolutely mind-boggling. And listen, I get it. It's Series One. It's the flagship, so there should be a lot of it. Should be in every retail store. It should be in all the hobby shops. Should be all over the place, right? So there should be a lot of demand for it. But again, as soon as you start oversaturating something, you're gonna burn people out. People only have so much money. There's only so many, millionaire hobbyists out there that at some point they're gonna get burned out. And that's the worst thing we can do. Now, if we're able to expand this globally into current production runs, then you know what? Then that's fine because there's a lot more people globally and that's spread out a lot more. But if we're not able to do that, it's going to go right back in the junk wax era, and we're going to end up concentrating all this product on a certain amount of people, and we're going to burn them out. We're going to burn people out, and we just got to be careful with that. So that's the thing that scares me the most of what's going on right now. I've heard this that Fanatics is assessing the number of autographs that they're doing. And, this is all hearsay. So, please, Fanatics, I'm not trying to pin you guys saying that you're not going to have as many autographs, but I think the athletes themselves are getting burned out by signing tens of thousands of cards. And so what's happening is they're going to cut everyone out, right? So that, Jackson Holiday is burned out. We try to get him in this year's spring product, and he's still playing catch up. He just doesn't have any interest of having more cards to sign. So it's not always about the money. It's just about burning the players out and getting them to the point where they don't want to even sign an autograph anymore. And we've seen and heard that quite a few times. So, that may be another approach that might help rein some of this quantity in too, because if there's not as many autographs, then I wouldn't think as much product would sell because people like to chase the autographs. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
yeah, that's a great point about we talk about collectors getting burned out, but the players themselves, and I'm here in Syracuse. We have the AAA New York Mets here. We have obviously Syracuse University. And I think I think you agree with this. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think players are signing less at games themselves, at the
Mhm.
events themselves. For what you just said, they've just signed so many for the companies that they're just like, I don't want to sign anymore. So whether it's
Yeah.
they run onto a bus or they quickly leave out a side door, I've heard even instances, Lance, where a player or an athlete will say, like, I can't sign up, you know what I mean? I signed for this company. That's how you got to get my autograph. So the landscape, I think that landscape has changed from how it used to be. But like you
Absolutely.
said, I think you make a great point. If the companies are wary of that, especially like you said, the big boys, I think it'll be good in the long run if they keep that in mind rather than just kind of try to cash in early and often. And it'll be interesting to see. But I feel bad for that. Obviously we know it's not all little kids at sporting events. You see adults with books and pulling out cards. Well, for that little kid that really just wants that autograph because he really
Right.
likes that player, that's who I feel for. That might not now be able to get that, but at the same time, you know, hopefully there's a product affordable to him too, where he can potentially get that same athlete he admires. But it's a different I'm the old man on the porch too, so it's definitely a different landscape, and that's what happens, right? As time
Right.
goes on, things change, and we have to adapt and change along with it, or we become the old man on the porch
Right.
for real, rather than just an expression. So, um, you guys are always at the national. I'm assuming you'll be there here in Cleveland. Talk about
Mhm.
kind of your thoughts on the national and what it means to your company getting out there. How important
Yeah.
is it for Onyx to be there?
No, I think it's the National is great, right? Everyone's there. I mean, the one in Chicago this past year was insane. Bringing in the comics and some of the Pokemon and some of the other stuff. I didn't even realize the convention center of Chicago got to be that big. So I got lost in there. It was pretty impressive. But the
Don't feel
National is
don't
great.
feel bad. Don't feel bad. I even asked people like, "Hey, how do you get out of here?" I remember asking that. Well, I had to meet somebody, and I was like going in circles. I'm like, I'm gonna be late. Like this is
Oh, it was
bad.
crazy. Yeah, it was
But
nuts.
yeah,
There were so many different entry points too. So,
yeah.
um, the Nationals important. If you've never been to one, I highly advise going to one, especially if it's Chicago. Chicago's always a really good event. It gives us a chance to get in front of the collectors and talk about things, talk about how we can be better, what we can do different, what they like, what they don't like, and taking that constructive feedback and making our next product even better than what it was before. Um, we do the free case break at the main pavilion there. And, every year I always ask people, how many of you heard of Onyx? And it was funny, the first year that we did it, I think two hands went up. And I'm like, well, that's why we're here. That's why we do this, right? Is so that you know who we are. And now almost every hand goes up, which is cool. But it shows us that we're doing some good things out there. And the hobby's still for the kids. Anytime we see kids, we try to give them free cards and hype them up about the hobby, wheel and deal. Some of these little 10-year-olds or 12-year-olds will come by with their stack of cards and want to wheel and deal. And man, they were better than I ever was at that age. So it's always impressive to see and meet all the different collectors at every age. And so that's what we always look forward to is just meeting with everyone, giving away some free stuff, and talking about the company and what we're going to be doing next. And John, we're always trying to do different things. And the event we're doing in the spring is going to be more engaging. The point you made earlier about how you go to the ballpark now and it's getting a little bit tougher to get the autographs because the guys are burned out or they don't have time or whatever the case may be. And we don't want to ever lose that essence of the interaction or engagement of the player. And what we're trying to do is that we're trying to bring more of that to the collector, of that behind the scenes. And that's what we're going to be doing this spring. And we want people to say, can you do this kind of inscription real time? This is a live stream, and the person signing, and they're like, "Hey, can you do this inscription?" Again, trying to keep it a family show and professional, but absolutely. And it's that engagement and that, like, oh my God, he just signed a card in this product. I gave him the idea. That keeps the excitement going. And so, that's what we want to keep doing, and grow the hobby, right? Got to grow this thing so it never dies out.
No, great point, right? And you mentioned that about someone like, hey, can you sign it like that? Now you got to go out and find when that car gets pulled. You got to buy that car because
That's
that
the
was
real
your
chase.
idea. That's the bounty and the chase. But I
Right.
believe that's how I found out about Onyx was at a national. I think
Mm.
like you said, I call it the Super Bowl of the hobby, Lance, and I think you're not going to get that many people from the hobby in one room at the same time
Right.
for a week, and so it's great exposure for whatever kind of hobby company you run or are in charge of, and so and it's nice to hear you say, "Hey, we listen to feedback. What do you want to see? What do you don't want to see? Or what can we do
Right.
better?" Sort of thing. I think if more companies kind of took that approach, they'd be better off for. It's nice to hear you take that line and whatnot. So I look forward to seeing you here in 3-4 months. 4 or 5 months in Cleveland. I've never been to Cleveland at all, let alone for a national. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm going to come in a day early. I'm a big music guy, so we'll make a day at the
Mm.
Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and check that one off the bucket list
Yeah.
as well. But look forward to seeing you in person there. I always give the guests kind of the final word. Anything you want to share, socials, website, stuff coming down the line, whatever you want to put out there. Take your time, give that stuff out.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, John. I know this isn't going to broadcast until after, or I think March 15th. We've got this big event that we're doing this spring, March 2nd and 3rd, with partnership with eBay. So it's not like, the Onyx store. This is actually with eBay Live. They're making a big marketing push on this thing, but again, it's, the date will pass by the time this airs. But the important thing that I want people to actually hear is, again, the engagement that we're going to be doing now. And we're hoping to do more of these events in the future, whether it's at the Futures game, Arizona Fall League, things like that. But we want to get more engagement. We want to get people involved with the hobby. So it'll be, even more than just collecting, but getting to know players, getting to know a different side of the player, and seeing, the human side of what they do. So that's exciting. But if you want to check us out, please check out, I think we're on Twitter or X, under Onyx_authentic. So please follow us. We put a lot of cool stuff out there and a lot of events that we're going to be doing. It's the best way to keep in touch with us. And then our website is onyxauthenticated.com. So our store needs a little work on it. So we'll be getting more and more stuff up there. But there are some things up there if you're interested in collecting autographed memorabilia. We do have some things for sale there. So yeah. So just kind of follow us and be prepared for some cool stuff.
That's awesome. It's nice to hear you talk about events where people can be engaged, right? I think when with those kind of things, you feel like you're more part of the hobby that you're in.
Yep.
That's only a positive. There's nothing bad about that whatsoever. I think more people should try that angle or try to be like that. That's the big thing. Sometimes with becoming too big of a company, sometimes you may lose
Mhm.
sight of that. You guys obviously haven't lost sight of that, and that's refreshing. So keep up what you do. You don't need me to tell you, Lance, but keep up the great work and the the great way you do things. And again, looking forward to seeing you soon.
Great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate, again, having us on today.
No problem. Thank you. We'll have you back too, as long as you come back. So.
Fantastic.